I'm going to talk to you a little bit this morning about two different case histories. I think you heard Stephanie's yesterday. I'm going to talk to you about the Montecito debris flow event in January of 2018 and the Kelly Barnes Dam failure in a small town in Georgia in 1977. So, two fairly different events, but I find them both to be pretty interesting. Learning objective. Going through these case histories really helps us get an understanding of those factors that contribute to the likelihood of someone losing their life in a flood, right? So we dig into these, we learn what we can, and then we look at our practice and see if there's an opportunity to do something better. So we're going to start with Montecito, Southern California, along the coast. It's in the city of Santa Barbara. See that here. Montecito is a little south, smaller, affluent community. This red boundary is the Thomas Fire. So this is California, we're no stranger to wildfires, right? And this small blue area here, that's where the debris flow took place, kind of on the northern side of up coast of where the Thomas Fire boundary is. Direction of the mudslides here. This image kind of shows you the topography up here. For those of you who have been to the Santa Barbara area, the city's kind of on a flat shelf, other than when you come up to the hills, there's part of the community in the back of the city there, and then there's the coast, and then there's the mountains. So it's a rather steep topography going right down to the sea. Okay, now that's important when you've just had a fire, then a really intense rainfall event, when you've got that really steep topography, because that can lead to a debris flow event. Early in the morning, January 9th, 2018, a lot of people would just come back from having evacuated from the Thomas Fire. So people have been away from their homes for quite a while. They were just allowed to come back, and then this low pressure front came into Southern California. Thomas Fire had been burning for about a month. It was about 90% contained. Now this is key, large amount of vegetation and root loss. It's rather dry down in this area. Erosion control, really relying on that vegetation. And those roots taking hold, you have a fire, takes a lot of that away, and then it's much easier to move that material. Low pressure system brought heavy rainfall to Southern California the day before, so there was some concern. Models didn't necessarily predict the type of intensity of the precipitation that they ended up seeing. It's about a 0.5% event, or a 1 in 200 probability of occurrence. The flow trigger here, you can see it at 0.24 inches. If you get 0.24 inches in a period of 15 minutes, they believe that that will trigger mudslide or debris flow, according to USGS. What you're seeing, how to read this graph is total rainfall in inches over here, that's your blue line. There's total rainfall over the course of about 24 hours, 2.5, 3 inches. But then you have these periods of intensity, which are these dots. I want to draw your attention to these right here. So inside of 30 minutes or so, you had really intense periods of rain, and that's what triggered the debris flow. How does the debris flow work? It's a nice little video. So this is on a loop. This is all green right here, and then this is post. The imagery is not great, but you can see that all of this is now brown. Remember I mentioned 0.24 inches per 15 minutes, or 24 millimeters per hour. They put these maps together. The gray line is the boundary for the Thomas Fire, right? Each one of these points are basin outlets, and based on the boundary of the Thomas Fire, these areas were delineated to have different probabilities of leading to debris flow. All right? So they looked at this and they said, with this rain that we think's coming, this is the debris flow potential. How do we warn and evacuate people? So this is the map that they put together. This is what we think that looks like. We're going to use this to communicate with the public and let them know that, hey, this rainfall event's coming. We believe that there's going to be mudslides and debris flow. Let's move. This red area here received a mandatory warning. The yellow area was given a notification. This was about 30 hours beforehand, the red and the yellow area, and then about 7 hours beforehand, these dark red areas where that map a couple of slides ago showed the debris potential, they had route alert. Police came and knocked on the door and said, hey, you have to leave. So these people were given a second warning. Right here along Sycamore Canyon Road, there's a little area right there that didn't fall in the boundary, and that was along one of the debris flows. Storm totals, we're living up here where this circle is, much as 2.5 inches, like I showed you in that graph previously, then down closer to the coast, 1.5 to 2 inches over a 24-hour period, but quite a bit of rainfall in the mountains right above Montecito. Imminent hazard warning. So I just talked about, we looked at the boundary, potential debris flow, warned people several hours in advance, more than a day in advance. Then we get closer to the event, only about 15% of people ended up leaving overall. We get closer to the event, 2:30, National Weather Service sends a text message alert to everybody. He says, hey, based on observed rain, you really need to get out of here. So this was another alert quite a bit closer to the event, in addition to the route alert and prior ones, right? 3:30, explosion and fire wakes people up. These are transformers on power lines exploding, right? Debris flow knocks them over, explode. So environmental cues really got people's attention, and that elicited a fair amount of response. At that point, it was kind of too late. 3:50 a.m., Santa Barbara County follows with a countywide alert, but at that point, slides had already reached US 101. US 101, you can kind of see the bottom of my screen here, comes right along the coast in Montecito and Santa Barbara. Then it starts to head north and it ultimately goes inland. But if slides already have gotten down to 101, they're effectively at the ocean. So they've already impacted a lot of people. They're going to impact us, right? So just talked a little bit about environmental cues. Boulders going down a road, that's going to make a lot of noise. If you've ever been next to a stream and heard boulders crack, move downstream, it's loud. It sounds like thunder. Building damage, boulders on the road, extreme rainfall, and really a lot of people heard the explosion, transformers exploding near their homes, right? What is mud flow? Talked a little bit about this. What's important for you all is we live, from Montecito, we live right here, this kind of debris flow area. So look at the bulking factor, somewhere between probably 1.5 and 2. Sediment concentration by weight, somewhere between 50 and 70, and then sediment concentration by volume between 40 and 70. This was a debris flow.
Right there! The flash flood's right there! Get out of here, go! Oh my God, Mom!
This mud and debris found this concentrated flow path, right? A lot of times on roads, which is a problem if people are trying to get to high ground and there's messaging that says get to high ground. Or, with all the conveyance near streets, right? Culverts and such as that is effectively taking that mud and debris down to those conveyance structures. But it also means people are stuck in their homes. There's a bunch of debris going down the street right outside your driveway. You're not going to hop in your car and drive away. You're sheltering in place. So if you hadn't evacuated before that happened, you're stuck. And then if there's a bunch of debris coming, that can be a problem, right? So, made a joke about the Prius. Circuit Prius is kind of funny, but also imagine being in a car with no ability to do anything, surfing down here. That would be quite horrifying. So these are the structures that were impacted by those debris flow paths, right? Quite a few. Want to draw your attention again to Sycamore Canyon Road and this area right here. That was outside that first alert boundary, okay? Why didn't the flood stay in the channel? Well, channels are relatively small, flash flooding is a thing, but also all this debris blocked these, you can see, relative to the folks standing in there. These are really large culvert systems, and water wasn't allowed to pass through them. They were blocked off, and that debris got out of it, got over bank, and got into people's homes or toppled homes. I'm going to look at some of the impacts. This is one of the debris flow paths. You see all these structures were toppled. This person's pool is okay, but quite destructive, right? Look at how high that mud line gets on this house, right? That's probably 4 feet. Car's not doing so well. And look at how large some of this material is. Look at how large some of these boulders are, right? Quite destructive. In some places, homes didn't topple, and you just had the mud flow ponding in the structure. I don't think that guy's spade shovel is going to help him out a whole lot. Here, it's almost up to the roof on the upstream side part of this structure. Fortunately, the structure only partially collapsed in the back here. Generally, it's, on the front side, it maintained its integrity. That's important when you're thinking about life loss, right? Because that means people could have moved to this part of the house and, in theory, been okay. If they're on the back side of the house, that could have been a problem. So right here, it's hard to see. She's right here, caked in mud. This young girl, she's, I believe, 13 in this picture. These firefighters are pulling her out of this collapsed home. She's the only member of her family that survived, and she was trapped here for several hours, which is, can't imagine how traumatic that would be.
His sister, 14-year-old Lauren, was rescued Tuesday. The men and women who saved her are haunted by those they couldn't reach in time.
This is an aerial view of an intersection. This is what that intersection looks like on January 1st of 2018, or thereabouts. And this is what it looks like after that debris flow. That stretcher right there is carrying that girl they just pulled out of that house. Consequences. These pin locations are locations of life loss. So remember I told you right along Sycamore Canyon Road there, those people didn't receive a warning. A fair amount of life loss right there. I also told you that only about 15% of people evacuated, right? So only 15% of people are evacuating. Why is life loss still higher here? You'd think these other areas people would be just as susceptible, right? If they didn't take a protective action to evacuate. It kind of coincidental, and these people didn't get a warning, and also the debris flow or the characteristics of the flood, the debris flow were more lethal in this area. So deeper, faster moving, more material, more homes toppled that had people. This is what happened in the aggregate. It happened at 3 a.m. When things happen at night, that's a problem. It's during the day, we're looking at our phones, we're looking at screens, we're sitting in a conference room talking to each other. Jason sees something on his phone, yells at me, hey, we all gotta get out of here, something like that. It's much easier for us to receive information during the day. 3 a.m., after I've been evacuated for a fire for a couple weeks, I'm just getting back to my home and I'm exhausted and I just want to sleep in my bed. Pretty hard to wake me up, right? So that that's a challenge. Yeah, they got a warning 30 hours prior, but it was, we've got some time, it's not here yet, and we'll see if it's actually bad enough for where we need to evacuate. So, 23 people lost their lives, direct life loss. That means their interaction, their final shelter location, interaction with the debris flow led to them losing their life. About 1,500 people included in that debris flow area, population at risk. You already, Jay, you defined population at risk, exposed part of stuff yesterday. Okay. So,
they all got it.
What's that?
I'm sure they all have it figured out.
Okay, cool. Exposed part, number of people that actually were exposed to the debris flow is about 1,200, so it gives us about 2% life lost as a percentage of exposed part for this event. So we're here, talking about dam and levee safety a lot. Obviously, we didn't have flood defense structures in this area, but when you think about how one hazard like a wildfire can increase the propensity for another sort of hazard and how that can impact human life, this is a really important event for us. We're actually working on a scope right now to do a validation study using our LifeSync software for the Montecito event. A group of guys, including someone over at HEC, built a non-Newtonian RAS model for, and RAS has a pretty cool debris flow feature that allows you to actually model events like this. So we're gonna try to dig in even further and do some more forensic analysis and get it into our software.
Of Montecito thought they were prepared.
Well, we sandbagged and put wattles down and all of that, prepared for a flood. That wasn't sufficient.
Not by a long shot. If that resident looks familiar, it may be because he's actor Jeff Bridges. What he first thought was the sound of heavy rain suddenly became a flashback to Northridge.
The house started to shake like an earthquake, and then I heard my wife screaming and coming out of the bedroom holding our dog, and boom, here comes the mud and the debris. And
He and his wife and dog ran to the highest point of their house and waited.
waiting for this sound right here, these helicopters.
That was their cue to run to the one dry spot in their front yard.
Soon enough they came, and a guy came down there on the line, and
His wife and dog went up first, then he went.
What was the experience like being hoisted up by a helicopter?
oh, it was beautiful. It reminded me of doing stunts in movies, you know.
Lessons learned. Kelly Barnes Dam failure, 1977. This is the inundation track. This is topography map. Toccoa Falls Dam's right up here. This is the community right down here. This is the Highway 17 bridge right here. I've got a better graphic coming up. Located about half a mile above 186-foot Toccoa Falls near Toccoa City, Georgia. Small community. There's a Bible college there. Again, a small school. Only a 4.5 square mile drainage area, really small drainage area. The embankment of the dam was 38 feet high. It hadn't been used for hydropower, which is its original purpose, for about 20 years. Only been used for recreation. It was in disrepair. And so this dam sits upstream of this really tall waterfall, upstream of this small community. Only a short distance downstream of the waterfall, faculty, staff, students, everyone pretty much lived in this community. The college and those that work or go to the college made up the community. Happened at night, 1 o'clock, 1:20 in the morning. About 5 to 7 inches of rain over the previous 4 days, okay? 2 separate flood waves in a really short amount of time. I mean, this all happened very fast. There wasn't a lot of time for anyone to do anything. First one was about 5 feet tall. The second wave was much larger, about 30 feet tall. A record taken from IWR report written in 2001, these waves plummeted over the falls and then shot with tremendous speed across the 200 to 500 foot floodplain to destroy nearly every residence they touched. For areas with debris, it was carried an estimated 65 feet above the regular creek level. It's kind of hard to imagine. The ceiling's probably 25 feet, so running 40 feet on top of that, that's a lot. 2 separate flood waves collided into Georgia Highway 17 bridge. Remember that? I'll show you that. It's only a couple miles from where the dam, a few miles from where the dam is. Almost no warning. This is really a structure that wasn't regularly maintained, wasn't monitored, and with the exception of volunteer firemen, there wasn't a lot in the way of emergency response or emergency management. 39 direct flood fatalities. It's a better graphic. This is the falls right here. And then this is Forest Hall. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about these various areas. Residence Row, RV Park. This is Trailerville. Trailerville is just a bunch of trailers side by side, small mobile home park. Hospital outside of the flow path, which is good. And then this is a Highway 17 bridge. So all the debris and homes that got ripped off their foundations and such crashed into this bridge, and the flow kind of dissipated back upstream. Forest Hall. So this is kind of L-shaped. You can see it here. This is high ground on the top of the screen, and that's out of the debris flow. Then you've got, it comes down the hill, then you've got the bulk of it right here. Excuse me. 75 were believed to be in the dorm at the time, and then they have a ground level, and there are 7 students at the ground level. Depths reached about 8 feet, which was enough to cover the ground level. They blew out windows, and some of these guys weren't lucky enough to evacuate uphill before water made it impossible to open the doors, right, on either end of the ground level. So they were trapped, and then they got sucked out through the windows. A couple less lucky ones got sucked out through the windows. So Kenny Carroll, Marcy Reese, Bobby Carter, and John Kerr squeezed through the doorway up to stairwell 1. So these were the lucky guys. And then Gary, Rick, Carrie drowned when they could not open the doors to their dorm rooms against the water. And 2 were sucked out through the windows, the 3rd drowned in his room. So you can see we've got folks here helping us with this. Susan, Maggie, they've done a lot of great work helping us get ready for this week. And I got a question about this slide. They said, do you definitely want to use people's names? Good question. For me, it's resounding yes. Why? They didn't push back, but why do I want to use people's names? Because this is why we do what we do, right? So that maybe at some point, Carrie Hanna doesn't drown in his room because we've done something upstream to prepare for a dam breach event, or we've done something to communicate with an EMA so that they can warn people ahead of time. This is a unique event, small rural area in the late 70s, communication infrastructure is different, right? But it makes you take ownership of this, right? It wasn't until I moved out to California and started working with these guys and we started really digging into how people lose their lives in floods to update the life loss method that, I felt a sense of ownership for what I do for a living. And I don't want to sound self-righteous. When people said to me earlier in my career, I told them what I did for a living, they said, oh, that sounds pretty morbid. I said, it's really just probability statistics. Water comes downstream, someone's there's some likelihood that they lose that. When you start reading about people losing their lives in a certain way, or a father not being able to pull his daughter out of a van that gets swept downstream, it is dark. But it also makes you really feel a sense of ownership in what you do. Maybe if I get up in the morning and take one action that could somehow mitigate the likelihood of this happening, maybe at some point, if we all do that collectively, something good comes of it, right? So this means something. This makes it mean something for me. I'm happy to share that with you all. All right, so this is what Forest Hall looked like. Remember, upstream, or that upper part on high ground, and then it goes down the hill here, and it was on the back side of this wall here, the other side, where the water came through and ripped windows out. And that's what that looked like. So you can see all the contents of those dorm rooms. These windows blew right out, the water sucked it out. It's a difficult sort of thing, thinking about how water can, the structural integrity is fine. The structure didn't topple, it's made of brick, it's anchored foundation. Structure didn't topple, people got sucked out of windows. So this was the first case history where I read something like that. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about people and vehicles, people losing their life in vehicles. This is a lot, but what this is saying is that David Fletter-Johann and Bill and Eldon, they were awake, volunteer firemen. They were having coffee and a cookie at the Ginthers. Remember, a small community, everybody knows each other. So because of all the rain, they were awake, and they were going to start moving people away from the creek, right? Hey, there's a lot of rain, the creek's rising, let's move people away so that everyone's safe. When they left, they saw that first 5-foot flood wave coming, right? So this guy, David Fletter-Johann, he's effectively the chief. He sends Ellsbury and Ironsburg to sound the alarm on the other side of the creek. So these guys try to get to the other side of the creek by running through the creek to get to the truck. Water pushed the truck sideways. They abandoned the truck. Ironsberger hesitated. When he stepped out, boots filled with water and pulled him under to his death. Effectively, the same thing happened to Ellsbury. He grabbed a tree, gave way. His waders filled up. He was pulled underneath. But he was able to force his boots off when he was pinned up against a rock, fought off debris and other obstacles. I can only imagine what those were, and eventually made it to shore in safety. When you get into situations like this, the likelihood of survival is really up to chance, right? And in some cases, just luck. Another volunteer fireman who worked for Fletter-Johann, he stayed behind when the others went to the Ginthers. Power went out, he drove along the creek towards the approaching flood, looking for an electrician and a fire truck. Water trickled up 6 inches above the floor of the truck. Tried to back it up, hit a tree, stepped into knee deep, then waist deep water. He managed to scramble up the hill to high ground. So these are pretty high resolution accounts of individual interaction with the flood. This type of thing really helps us learn a lot. One of the best forensic records of a flood I've seen is the Dale Dyke Dam failure in the UK in 1884. It kind of makes you wonder, why are those records so good, and more recent floods, it's harder to come by that type of forensic evidence. But his sister, Eloise Pitty, again, a small community, lived in Traylorville. It's not entirely known what transpired. Called the operator at 1:30. Remember, he left, her brother Dee left about 1:20. Thinking about the explosion she heard was a print shop fire. Came aware of the flood, attempted to drive to Upper Traylorville. So Traylorville, moves its way down to the creek. Car stalled and was washed away. She drowned. Might have been better off on foot. But all right, so we talked about Forest Hall. Then here are these cars here. This is the D. Penny car. Remember, he got out and ran up the hillside here. This is I believe this is Eloise Penny's car. And then this is Ellsbury and Ensberg. So now we're going to talk about Residence Row. Now all of these red structures mean that, or these red boundaries might be hard to see with the lighting, but all these red boundaries mean the structure has been toppled, yellow means structure is damaged, green means we're okay. So this is a record taken from that same IWR report, 02-R-3 from 2001. Totals down here, let's look at this. 29 people, 19 direct flood fatalities, 100% destroyed. Now I'm going to take you through some of these. This is the flow path. This is Residence Row right here along the creek. We're going to drive by what Residence Row looked like afterwards. Ironsberger House, remember he was one of the volunteer firemen, swept downstream, so he's gone. Mom, age 27, 4 children, 8, 6, 4, and 2, all asleep, no one evacuated. Frame house floated off its foundation and was swept downstream. Son, age 4, was pulled to safety. He was the only member of his family to survive. Trailerville, estimated that 27 trailers were swept away, including those in Residence Row, 32 single-family homes total. So between Residence Row and Trailerville, this really small 4.5-mile drainage area from this single event, 32 single-family homes were swept downstream. That's pretty significant. Even for larger dam breach events, when we're going through the risk assessment process, seeing that type of concentration in a single area is uncommon. Trailers are primarily married students. When you think about trailers versus a structure that's anchored, and you heard about kind of the key elements of life loss estimation yesterday, thinking about potential for structure stability. No surprise, trailers have a relatively low stability threshold, right? They're not anchored, they're on tires. Tires like to float. And they sit up a little bit off the ground so water can get underneath them, carry them downstream relatively easily. So estimated 15 direct flood fatalities in Trailerville. So Residence Row is right here, creek turns, Trailerville's right here, right along the creek. So those, pretty much that lower 2/3 of Trailerville got taken out by the flood. So I'm going to go through that a little bit. This is Nicholson. All 4 lived. Family of 4, parents both 29, both children age 7. Saw trailers and a bus floating past their trailer before their trailer floated off its foundation. A trailer swept downstream, tore a hole into Nicholson's trailer, and they floated out on a foam mattress to safety. Again, situations like this, it's largely left to chance whether or not someone lives or dies. Being with others, in some instances, some of our digging shows that it can help, where someone gets a hold of something, it can pull you to safety. Someone gets to high ground, can pull you up, that sort of thing. But that's been anecdotal so far. Smith trailer, Smith family of 3, parents age unknown, daughter age 10, fled on foot and were caught by a flood wave. Father grabbed onto a car that happened to go by him, floated to safety. Daughter was pulled from the flood. Mother survived by fleeing on foot, floating to safety. So they got out of their trailer, they were on foot, and they were swept downstream, right? So it's really, you can be in a vehicle, you can be on foot, you can be in a structure, and there's some likelihood in any one of those cases that you can be knocked off your feet, or your vehicle can be swept downstream, or your structure can be top. In this case, a 30-foot breach wave jumping off a 185-foot waterfall down on the community. You can imagine how that would lead to flood characteristics that could exceed stability criteria, right? Camp trailer, family of 5, early 30s, 7 and 9, and then one grandmother over the age of 65. It's the first trailer to be swept away. You can see it's on the upstream end of Trailerville. Floor collapsed. Father was able to save daughter. Mother failed to hang on to son. Grandmother survived by floating to safety on furniture. Father was not even aware that the dam existed. So that's interesting, right? Because How many people do you think live downstream of dams that might not be aware that that dam that's somewhere upstream, maybe they go to recreate at some time, could, if it failed, impact their home? A lot of emergency managers are prepared for frequent events, and rightfully so. They need to communicate with the public on a regular basis and let people know, hey, this is going on, Ambrose, or potential for flash flooding, fire, things like that. Dam breach is generally irregular. So, and this one was, like I said, disrepair, not monitored, and probably didn't have wasn't a whole lot of effort within the community to make people aware of the dam and the potential for dam flooding. Trailable aftermath. You see, there used to be trailers all along here, all down here. Those are all gone. All right, quotes from Kelly Barnes. Now, if you, in a small community in Georgia, Bible college, and water from close to 200 feet above your head falls down on you, that could probably feel like kind of a biblical sort of event, I would imagine. And you really get that from these quotes. They take you through some aftermath. Mary Jo Ginther, with frightened children, one already lost, she serenely said, Jesus is with us, he'll take care of us. We're going to Jesus. There's a fair amount of quotes here that says, people recognized or believed that they were about to die, which is, and fortunately not all of them did, but all of them were placed in situations that we hope people don't ever have to be exposed to. So this is a cross section of the dam at the site where it failed, kind of looking on the side of it here. So, I won't say all's well that ends well, but this is an image from believe this is a campus map from 2016. I did hop online to see what happened to Fuller Falls, Georgia. And college is still there. Parts of it, it certainly looks different than it did. They didn't rebuild the dam, so they did persevere. That community's still there.